Alhamdulillah, Allah fi umri estain, Allah fi kulli umri amjid. Innani ofe Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala amtanani wa shukri. Muhammadun huwa Sayyidina wa mahbubana wa innahu kana rasulan nabiyyan. Innana nuhafidun sunnatuhu wa shariatuhu. Salawatu Allah ta'ala wa salamuhu alayhi. Salamu alaikum rahmatullahi barakatuh lil ikwani wa okwati fi Afrika wa Europa wa Amerika wa kuli makan. Halim wa silent bikum. Thank you, my dear brothers and sisters who showed up today and those who may show up here, inshallah ta'ala, on a topic of fiqh, dealing with the steps of Shaytan. This issue is spoken readily in the Quran, and the scholars of old tackled this issue, and they made determinations about the issues of the steps of Shaytan. And during this month of Ramadan, I'm hoping that all of us, the Muslims, are having a blessing, and that they're in good health, and that they can enjoy the blessings of Ramadan, because this is such a sacred month, and the blessings behind this month is endless. From our fasting to our prayers to our behavior during this month. So this is a time when we also should reflect on the things that get us in trouble as Muslims, even as human beings, because the steps of Shaitan don't only affect the Muslims, but they also affect the the non-Muslims as well. Assalamu alaikum, Abina. Thank you, my dear sister, for showing up. And so they can benefit as well from any lessons dealing with the methods of Shaitan. We have to understand that we go back into history. We look that all of the empires or regimes or nations that follow Tawheed were all brought down because they began to do what? They began to go away from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's guidance, and they began to go to the steps of Shaitan. And he gradually brings those who practice the oneness of God, Tawheed in Arabic, and brought them to his way, and the nation was destroyed. Because once that happens, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala draws his hand from that nation, and everything happens. And so we look at all of from all the history, especially if you look inside Egypt. Salam alaikum, my dear sister Amina. And the Tawheed is the number one enemy to Shaitan, the Satan, because he doesn't want you to worship God, Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. He doesn't want you to follow his method. So he has created a method to deceive you and to bring you from his worship. And we see this. We see this everywhere in the world. And so, and if you look at the past, like the Romans and so forth and so on, who were involved in a lot of different aspects of debauchery and persecution and so forth, invading people's lands without right and so forth and so on. So we have that. We have that in the past. And the Muslims, when they came to take hold and they began noticed, the first 3 generations was the best. After that, you notice the Shaitan, the devil, began to gradually work his way. And we'll see the empires grow strong, and then they weaken, and then another comes and replace it, grow strong, weaken, another comes, grow strong and weaken. This has been the story of Tawheed, meaning that the rulers, the nation, and the people follow it at the first, begin to weaken and follow the devil in the end, and then the nations are destroyed. This is through human history. So this is something that in fiqh we talk about, and the scholars of all they've talked about this. All the four madhabs talked about the same issue as well, and it's important that we fight the devil and his handmaidens and those who work with him, because we have people. I mean, they're on YouTube, they're everywhere, and they're working. I mean, day and night. And you have to ask the question. Then I'll start in the lesson. You ask why isn't the devil so prevalent inside the United States? He is, but he doesn't have to do as much work. Why is that? Because the nation is not in the oneness of God. It's in a Trinity. They're mushrikun. They believe in many different things. You have some believe only in their own power, some worshiping nature, some have sexual worship, some worship money, some worship a variety of different things. Some are making their world based upon stealing and so forth and so on. So subhanahu wa ta'ala is now, as you see what's happening in the United States, is taking his hand from the nation, from the United States in particular, and the Western countries, because the Western countries are so corrupted, it's beyond belief. And it's not only just about money and so forth and so on, but the morals have gotten so corrupted that the devil doesn't have to do much work anymore, because he's already planted his seed, and people follow behind that, and they're doing everything. It's not enough for them to do. They even want to have relations even with animals, okay? Or they have big orgies, and they have a variety of different things. They can't settle for things normal. They'll want to have relations even on a freeway. It's got to the point the devil doesn't have to work, but he's focusing hard on the Muslim countries, because why? Muslim countries are still in Tawheed, and the people are generally still in Tawheed, meaning the oneness of God. So he's working. He's working his way. It's worked on many people. There's many who say they're Muslims, and they have fallen into this trap. So when we look at the footsteps of Shaitan, we have to ask, how do we, as Muslims in particular, how do we strengthen ourselves against the following the footsteps of Shaitan? And one is by the remembrance of subhanahu wa ta'ala. If you're constantly making dhikr upon him, alhamdulillah, Allahu Akbar, these two in particular, and even part of the shahadatain. Assalamu alaikum, my dear brother Isaac. And this will help you to fight off Shaitan, because Shaitan does not get around any person who is pronouncing the name of subhanahu wa ta'ala and making remembrance, or what we call in Arabic dhikr, upon subhanahu wa ta'ala. Meaning, like me, when I go to the masjid, I always make a lot of dhikr. Dhikr, remembrance, Allahu Akbar, Subhanallah, La ilaha illallah, many different things like this. And I use my fingers. And I count 1, 2, 3, and I Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. And this is how I do this type of dhikr. So anyway, the dhikr of Allah is important to fight off Shaitan, because he won't get around you if you in dhikr. He's gone. He's moved out. So dhikr is a protection against the seed of Satan that he tries to put inside you to get you away from that. Also, he'll make you sleepy. He'll make you yawn and get you tired, or he'll bring up something, that you have some bills to pay. So he get you to worry about that, so you stop the dhikr. But the remembrance of subhanahu wa ta'ala is one of the conditions that help you to fight the steps of Shaitan. The second is is that that you have a strong nia, that your nia is strong and is correct. Again, the nia is dealing with the heart. We as human beings don't have the power to look at another person's heart and knows what he's feeling. We can only judge by the actions. And as one said before, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh, he said, we can't judge by the heart, but we can judge by the actions, because the actions speak for the heart. That was very wise wisdom by our first caliph, Abu Bakr radiallahu anh. He said this, and that we can't judge by that. But we have to strengthen our desire, meaning when it's time to pray, we make sure our nia is that we want to pray, not because we have to pray, because we want to pray, and that we want to make wudu, ablution. We want to do all these things. So we strengthen that. And the third is understanding your jihad. Understanding your jihad. Now, people say, oh, jihad, oh, you talking about, no, I'm not talking about killing. Killing is not jihad. That's not jihad. Jihad, definition of it, meaning under the terms of fiqh, is 4 categories. One is cleansing and purifying your heart. That's the first thing in order for it to be a successful jihad. Second is to fight, as we talk about right now, the steps of Shaytan, to fight the devil. Third is the hypocrite, our battles against him, and how to overcome the hypocrite. And then fourth, the heartbeat, the disbeliever, the salibiyin, the people who fight the Muslims, who legislate against the Muslims, who discriminate against the Muslims. That's the jihad that is recognized. Now, of course, jihad to defend yourselves and so forth and so on, that's another story in itself. But the 4 main categories of jihad is what I explained to you. It has nothing to do with killing. Okay, the bombing, that's not jihad, that's criminal, as I said to you many times before. The Muslim who does this, he's following the steps of Shaitan, because subhanahu wa ta'ala has made it clear, and our prophet made it clear, that you don't kill the innocents. You don't set a bomb in a place and kill women and children and so forth, old men and women and people who are inside of a store, and you bomb it. No, that's following the steps of Shaitan. That's not following the guise of subhanahu wa ta'ala. 4, the Muslim strengthens his prayer. Strengthen it, meaning doing it correctly, prolonging it according to the sunnah, meaning that you don't have to pray for 1 hour. That's assessed, because Prophet ﷺ said there's moderation in worship, meaning that you don't go to one extreme or the other. You don't go to disbelief, but you don't go to extremism as well. So you make meticulous actions during the time of your prayer, making sure that you're paying attention to your wudu before your prayer. This is how you do it, because the steps of Shaitan, you won't be following them if you're doing this, because if you're strengthening your prayer, Satan is gone. He's not going to be around you. He's going to try to come around you and try to figure ways, because why? The dunya, the worldly life is, we think, I got bills to pay. How I'm going to buy this car? My children need clothes. I don't know how I'm going to get the money to do this. I got a mortgage I got to pay. Those things do take a lot of our heart and take a lot of our time. And Shaitan plays with that. So he gets you to concentrate on that, and he gets you not to concentrate on subhanahu wa ta'ala, making dhikr. You get so upset, you're angry. We're all human. We have these days where you're so sad because of the conditions that you're in, and you forget about making dhikr to subhanahu wa ta'ala, or you forget about your prayers. You don't pray good. You want to hurry up, or you don't make your wudu, your ablution good before your prayers. Those are the type of things that I'm talking about. Also, very, very important, number 5 here, is your obedience as a Muslim to Kitabillah, the Quran, and the Sunnah, and the Sharia of the Prophet, alayhi salatu salam. You must do your best to adhere to it and learn it, memorize it, and try to follow it. If you do this, you have less a chance of falling into the traps, as our predecessors have done in the past, to the traps of Shaitan. Because have you noticed, if you look at history, when you have vacated the Sharia, you have vacated Quranic law, you have vacated the Sunnah of our Prophet, alayhi salatu salam, you notice the country goes down. And remember, as I explained to you before, you can always tell the health of a country by two conditions. One, the woman, as our brother Malcolm said, our ancestral brother Malcolm had said. And secondly, by the iman, the ratio of iman versus debauchery. If you have corruption at low levels and iman, meaning faith, is high, the country is strong. When it's the exact opposite, when the debauchery is strong and the faith is low, the country is down. And we see that. Look at America. Yes, America is strong, but it's very sick because what has happened now? The faith is really down. Nobody's worshiping, very little. And those who are worshiping, they're worshiping everything but subhanahu wa ta'ala. They're worshiping themselves. They're worshiping statues. They're worshiping money and so forth and so on. And debauchery is off the charts. Homosexuality off the charts. Homosexual marriage off the charts. You turn on the TV, you see debauchery. You can't watch anything anymore except you see debauchery. The black films, who I was, a young man, so proud to see which, of course, they hate it. But when I was in the teenager and in my early adulthood, we had black movies. They didn't have that. They had some debauchery in it, but not homosexuality. Now you turn on a black film, it's got homosexual themes in it. I mean, this is following the steps of Shaitan. And America is the biggest of that, along with Russia as well and other Western countries. They have legislated to allow this to go. And a prime example of that is this. In America, in particular, the man can have 100 mistresses. Okay, he can have 100 mistresses, children all over the place, no problem. But if the man goes to marry a second wife to make it legal, it's illegal. It's called bigamy. You understand? You see what I'm saying? Because the legislators have followed now the steps of Shaitan. He told them, look, go ahead and have sexual relations with 100 women and do what you want with them. But don't marry, because when you marry, you have responsibilities. This is what I'm talking about how the steps of Shaitan, how they guide those in legislating. And we see this everywhere in the world now. We see this everywhere, even in the Muslim country now. We have Muslim politicians everywhere who are leaving the Quranic law and the Sharia and going to Western quote unquote law, and where they're introducing, things, homosexuality, open debauchery, and so forth and so on. This is what we're talking about, the steps of Shaitan. Shaitan has entered in the hearts of these people, and now they're following this path. And the way for you to not to follow it is do, as I was talking about here, these 5 things here to help. This more, but for brevity, I just gave you 5 to help you, to guide you in this regard. Now, the scholars of old have said that just about every sin is attributed basically to Shaitan. As we talk about homosexuality, in Islam, homosexuality is a crime. Now, those who may advocate this, that, I don't care what they advocate about homosexuality. They say we have no right to do. I'm not talking about discriminating against them. In Islam, it is against the law. Our Prophet, alayhi salatu salam, was very pointed about this. He said to kill the one who's doing it and kill the other one who's receiving it. That means both. That's his law. I say what he says. I don't care about what the modernists are saying. We should not talk against it. It's not their fault. We know it is their fault. They adopted Shaitan's method, and they took that method, and so they made it normal, which is not normal. Because if it was normal, they could have children from that. That's why our prophet said you kill both, because he didn't want that spread through the Islamic nation. So this is why he killed these people. And he made it clear that his law of homosexuality you kill them. There was no jail time. They were just killed. And even the Torah, you look at this, even Jewish law, they stone these people or they throw them off a cliff. Those who perform these type of acts were not tolerated. Look at our prophet Moses, alayhi salatu salam. What happened when he came upon the people? Remember when he got up there and got the laws? He came back down to people and they were practicing all kind of debauchery. The people who were practicing debauchery, subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them. He destroyed them. That's right. So it goes to show you that every prophet enforced God's law. He did not make up new laws. He enforced God's law. Okay. Now we know that this is the debauchery. But we also have the subtle things too we don't think about. We have people, this goes for the Jews and Christians as well. They play with the religion. They adopt some here, they change some here, and so forth and so on. This is following the steps of Shaitan. Again, because Shaitan does not want you or me to follow subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't want you to follow that. So he wants you, and you start putting things in your heart. You say, okay, Yahya, maybe I don't have to pray this day. I'll make it up in 2 days, and then you don't make it up. You lost all those prayers. To many scholars, when you even vacate one prayer, you're now a disbeliever. But this is what I'm talking about. Shaitan will go into you and begin to make you think that you can play around with the religion. And this is what he's done to Jews and Christians in particular, because they changed their books and they changed their way of worship and so forth and so on. What Shaitan does with the Muslim is quite different than the other disbelievers, in the sense because he doesn't have to work on them as much, but on the Muslim he does. So what he does, he gradually pulls the Muslim from Tawheed and gradually starts giving him things. Meaning, you're walking down the street and the same pretty girl comes by you, and you look a little bit and you turn and you keep walking. Next day she comes again, and you look a little bit longer. The third day she comes, and this time she has scant clothes on, so you can see her ornaments, her beauty, and you begin to do more. The fourth time now, you want to even talk to her. The fifth time, you actually do talk to her. This is what I'm talking about, how Shaitan works on the Muslim. He begins to draw him slowly into his trap, and he uses a woman like this. And we know we're not talking about only women are devilish. Men are devilish too. We know that because men kill and women are doing things as well. So we're not going to say that only the woman, but the devil does have his minions, and they're women and men, and whatever it takes. If he knows that what's in your heart, because your thoughts, he said, okay, I know this man Yahya. He likes this woman who's tall and thin. So what he do? He'll go and bring one of his minions, who's a woman tall and thin, and she's a devil worshiper, and she'll come by you constantly with perfume, seductive attitude, very sweet voice, and to lure you away from Tawheed and from subhanahu wa ta'ala's law. Now, third, the Shaitan will also go after the Muslim and his good works. He will stop you from making these good things. When you know you should be helping your brother who's poor, all of a sudden Shaitan tell you, look, Yahya, you keep your money. Don't give Amina, don't give Isaac any money here, even though their families are starving, but don't give them anything. This is the devil talking to you. So you will follow it in time, because you have some money here. He tells you, look, instead of you giving that money, you go buy ice cream. You go over and get extra this and that, or you go do this, or go and you take this money and do this with it. Don't give this to your brother and sister who's needy. This is what Shaitan does to the Muslim, and also to others as well. But in particular, the Muslims, he does this. He goes after the Muslim because why? Kitabillah, subhanahu wa ta'ala's book. He does not want you reading that book. Why? Because in our book, Subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you directions how you defeat him. He talks about Shaitan. He talks about his means his party in Arabic. He talks about him in there continuously, how you defeat him, how you have to be wary of him, how you should be cognizant of his moves against you. This is the book, our book, because it has not been tampered with. The Bible, we talked about that many times. It's 140 different versions of it. And I remember when I was a Christian, I could not understand that when the pastor would ask us to read the same verse, 5 people would get up. Each one of the verses have different verbiage to it. Interesting, isn't it? And I think about that in my days as a Christian. You read, the guy says, read Psalms, whatever number, 24 Psalms, read that verse. 5 people would read it, and each one have different versions of that verse. In the Quran, it's the same. If we pick up Baqarah, the surah, the second surah, and we pick up the verse 21, I read the same verse that my brother's reading in Turkey. I read the same verse my brother in South Africa is reading also. My brother who's in Chile or in Nicaragua or in Mexico or in Los Angeles, we're all reading the same verse with the same verbiage. That's the miracle of the Quran, because Subhanahu wa ta'ala gave that promise to our prophet that he would not have his book tampered with, because the others came and their books was tampered with because the people again follow the footsteps of Shaitan. Now, some things you don't think about. Part of the steps of Shaitan is discrimination. We as African people know this all too well, don't we? Those who practice this are following the steps of Shaitan. And if you look at some of them and you look at psychological profiles of many of these guys, they have disturbances of their brain because of this racism. This is not from Subhanahu wa ta'ala. Subhanahu wa ta'ala does not put this in your heart. He does not put this in your head, but Shaitan does. When you make it a dicker, meaning you make remembrance on it, and we have that in the United States. We have white supremacists, we have those in the government who their focus is 24 hours, discrimination, how they can go after African people, how can they deny the African people their rights, how they can even take their voting from them, how they can kill them on the streets, how they can legislate against them. This is part of the steps of Shaitan that are being followed. Subhanahu wa ta'ala does not guide anybody to do wrong. We always must remember that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala only guides you to do what is right. The devil always guides you to do wrong, and he'll make you even think that what you're doing that is wrong in Subhanahu wa ta'ala's eyes, make it right, make it as though it's good. And we see that in debauchery, where at the time you're weak and you do go into debauchery. This woman that you see who is visiting many different men, all of a sudden you think of her as pure snow. But once you come out of the devil's trap, you ask yourself, how did I go with this woman? How did I do this? How I could think of this woman, how I could do this. This is what happens when you fall trapped to Shaitan. The discrimination, racial discrimination, genocidal racist tendencies, genocidal killings, legislations, the acts, and pondering on acts on how to kill African Americans in particular, because we have it worse than others. Yes, on the African continent may be bad. There's some things, but you don't have it as bad as you have it over there in the United States. You're still pretty much free. I'm here in Africa, and I know we have problems, yes. But how many of us have the problem when we walk out of our house in LA, we can be shot down by one of these white, racist, genocidal, racist policemen? Brother, the odds are great now. We know that. You can be walking and jogging in the wrong area, quote unquote, and you can be gotten. They can be shot. We know how easy it is now. Now they even more creative. Oh, yeah, I shot Yahya. Yes, I shot him, but I didn't mean to take out my gun to shoot him. And I don't know what happened. It just happened. So we should forget it. Yes, I killed him and I'm sorry, but this is what they're doing now. Or, yes, I thought I had the taser, but instead I used my gun. Others are saying, well, I thought I saw him with the gun. Now they killed that 13-year-old kid. And my understanding there in Chicago, my understanding from what the videos are showing, he didn't actually have a gun in his hand, that the gun was behind him. And so you see what I'm talking about, where I'm getting at, that the seeds of Shaitan is strong among many of the whites and blacks as well, okay, and Hispanics and Asians. Because anywhere where there's evil doing, it doesn't matter what color you are. But in the United States, in particular, the people who legislate over you are devilish. They're devilish. And you see that in the method, the creative method of way how they go after the melanated people, blacks, Hispanics, Samoans, Tongans, Thai people, not Japanese. They don't mess with Japanese too much because they consider them to be white. But the Indians and so forth and so on, Pakistanis, they go after all the melanated people. They go after them, and they find creative ways to kill them. So this is a problem. But again, I'm giving you something you can think about. This is the steps of Shaitan, and you make prayer against those who practice this, who follow this, who advocate this. You pray against them because that's what you should do. You should pray against these who are devilish. We're not talking about the single act of mistreatment. You go to a store and this guy's been treating you good and say he's white, and this day he had something that's not right, and he yelled at you. That's a different situation. We're talking about those who practice devilish works every single day. This is who we're talking about here. We're not talking about the guy who makes a single mistake. He yell at you inside the store or something like that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about these stuff that's going on the street now. These policemen who are killing, and these policemen who have a different mindset when it comes to African people than they do of their own, who allow the white supremacist groups to run free without legislation against them, while they legislate against black people. These are the type of things here we should be praying against them. Now, we know that Subhanahu wa ta'ala has his way. And we also know that in Islam, we look at everything because Islam is a living religion. It's practiced every single day. As I said, we don't have days off on this. And we have a guidance because we have our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, and who translates the Quran for us. So we have his way, and we can learn things that you don't even think about. One of the devil's traps is food. Yes, food. And when you think about this, you see the people who are filthy rich, the extravagance of food. Now you say, well, yeah, I don't know about that. Well, let's talk about that a little bit here. Subhanahu wa ta'ala made it. He put us on this earth. He gave us things we can eat. The animals too. You look at the bear, you look at the wolves. They don't kill relentlessly. They kill only what they need to eat. The wolves, he goes in a pack of, say, a buffalo, and he attacks the buffalo or the deer. And he only kills what he needs to survive. That's it. He doesn't go kill the whole herd. He kills only one or two animals that to feed his flock. That's it. The human being, we're supposed to be the same way. We should only eat what we need to survive. We put food in the house only enough where it keeps us survive. That's it. But you notice something, that you look at history, you see rulers, extravagance of food. That's the steps of Shaitan, because you begin to worship the food, meaning from when you wake up in the morning to the time you go to bed, it's food, delicacies, sweets, drinks, and so forth and so on. Those are the things also falls under the guise of Shaitan. And you see rulers, who have extravagance. They have so much food, they can't eat it all. And some guest to come over to this one country, and he has a whole table full of food that could feed 30, 40, 50 people. And most of the food gets discarded. And the ruler and the dignitary from another country, they eat a small meal. All the rest of this meal goes away. That extravagance is against Subhanahu wa Ta'ala's principle, because our Prophet ﷺ said that we should be moderate in everything that we do. Water, everything. Water, food, we should be moderate in it, not extravagance of it. And a prime example of that is, remember when waba, it's in Arabic. In English, the virus, the coronavirus, when it came, panic struck, and people began buying up everything, included here, the same thing in Morocco. Everyone was affected. Everybody began to buy 50 pounds of rice, potatoes. They just, just going crazy. Shaitan was working overtime in this case. He had the whole world scrambling to get food and to stock it up like we were rats in a sewer. How they stack up their food and stuff like that. Or a chipmunk, he'd get nuts and he was stored in a tree. This is what we were doing. We were getting rice, a potato, bread, flour. Stockpiling enough to feed you for almost 2 years. And then what happens? Most of that goes old after they calm down, after Subhanahu wa Ta'ala comes and clears out their head. You sit there and say, you know what? I can't eat all the 50 pounds of rice. I don't know what happened here. But this is, again, the steps of Shaitan, and we should be aware of that. When we shop, we buy enough. Yes, we have extra. We have extra bread in the house. We have water. We have corn, or we have things. We have extra to feed us for 2 or 3 days. But we don't have enough food here to supply me for 6 months to a year. No. Even though we have a freezer, yes, you have fish that you can keep, but we don't stockpile the food. This is normal. So we have the condition that we look at the animals, because when we see the animals only kill for what they need. When the animal's outside of his nature, like we had here in Kenya, I think it was many decades ago. I don't know if you ever seen that movie. I forgot I can't think of his name. Douglas. I can't think of his name. He was in this movie, and Val Kilmer was in this movie about the 2 lions who were killing. They were killing the men on the railroad. These 2 were vicious man eaters. They were outside of their nature. They were killing just to kill. That's not what a lion does. But these 2 did that. And they called them the devil and the devil's son, because the way they killed. And this is about, I think about 40, 50, 60 years ago that this happened. And it was vicious. And these 2 big, powerful male lions were taking people in their sleep, and they wouldn't eat them. They eat only part of them. That's all, and discarded the body. And they were stockpiling. Can you believe this? They were making trophies of the humans that they had killed, and they found trophies that they had put inside caves. Lions don't do that. They didn't do that. But these 2 lions did. They were outside of nature. They were killing human beings and then taking them as trophies, and they let their meat rot, and then they store the bones, the skull. They found all this stuff in a cave. We don't know why these 2 devil lions did this, but they were finally killed. But to make a point is that they were outside of nature, because the lions don't kill this way. You see that. The lions kill only enough to have food. We should follow that. Subhanahu wa Ta'ala said, you get enough to feed your family. Yes, you have extra bread, but not for a whole year. Not for 2 years. That's outside of that. And he uses that. Drink. Here's the other thing too. Subhanahu wa Ta'ala never guided no Christian, no Jew, no Muslim to drink beverages that get you high. That's an invention of man. Subhanahu wa Ta'ala is against that, because he knows that you take too much of it, you get intoxicated. When you get intoxicated, things happen. We know that people kill, they do things that they should not do when they get intoxicated. So this is what we're talking about here, that the Shaitan footsteps, he will guide you to drink beer, wine, vodka, all this type of thing, and you drink it. And what happens to the people who drink this? They begin to think about it. I hadn't had my drink today. I didn't have my drink. Usually Friday, Saturday, Sunday, I go and I drink a gin, or I drink a vodka, and so forth. That's the remembrance of what? Shaitan, because he put that in you to make you think about that wine. You think about that vodka. This is what we're talking about here, that he uses this. Shaitan uses that to bring you again. When a person is intoxicated, he don't think about subhanahu wa ta'ala. He's thinking about all kind of other things. This is what we're talking about here in this situation. That to guard us, our scholars have told us the methods here of how we guard ourselves against this. Cigarettes, marijuana, hashish, cocaine, heroin, all of this stuff is from the devil's mindset. Those things are put on the earth, yes, for the right medicinal use, but we have misused it. And now we have made a remembrance of it, and people are hooked on it, and we've had drug wars. They're everywhere in the world, everywhere in the world. This is the footsteps of Shaitan that are followed. Now, this is an interesting one too. Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you, and all prophets, from all the prophets, Subhanahu wa ta'ala says, don't make distinctions of any of them. There's not one better than the other. No. Subhanahu wa ta'ala makes that decision. We don't. Each one always guides us to the good. But if you notice something, in the ages of all of the empires, you see the thing again go from bad to worse, where they begin to do the things that are wrong and consider it good, and the things that are good consider it not good. This is what we see today. We see the genocidal racists, the white nationalist supremacists who fights the Muslims to take you from prayer. He goes and tries to make laws even in Muslim lands to stop you from worship, This is what we're talking about here. What is the harm in the brothers and sisters going to the mosque, or our brothers, the Jews, going to a synagogue? Why would they want to stop that? You have to ask that question. Why do you want to stop that? Who are they hurting? They're not hurting anyone. The man gets in his car and he goes to his synagogue to worship. Who's he hurting? It's not a national security issue. But these people, the Salafiyin, the Salafiyin are the crusaders. I'm talking about the white nationalist governments who fight Muslims. We call them Salafiyin. They're crusaders and stuff like that. They go after who? The Jews, and they go after the Muslims in particular. And they go after your faith. This is what they do. And you have to ask why. Why do you want to stop us from going to the masjid? For what reason? We're only worshiping. We're worshiping. We're not talking about killing him. We're not talking about doing anything, but they want to stop that. This is part of the steps of Shaitan that our scholars talk about. That when they begin to take you away from worship, this is what they're trying to do. And they're still doing it today. I know that. I'm a victim of that. Where I've had these people, these Americans who call themselves Americans, which I know they are Americans working out of the embassy, who come after me to try and told me straight. They're going to stop me from going to the masjid. That's right. These are white nationalists, genocidal racists who are working out of the embassy came to tell me they were going to stop me from going to the masjid. And they tried many things to do it. I'm telling you, but I don't want to get into that now. That's another story in itself. But just to give you guidance, to show you that what people who are under the influence of devil, how they work. And those who work with the Salafiyin, the Harbi, remember the four levels, the disbelievers, the persons that we came up with. 3, you cannot fight. But the 4th one, the Salafiyin, the Harbi, the ones who fight us, we can fight them back. They're the ones who legislate against the Muslims, put laws in to remove your hijab, remove the woman's hijab, to stop you from going to the masjid, close up your masjid. When you want to build a masjid, he stops that. This is what we're talking about here. They go after the faith of the person. And I remember something in Compton a long time ago, and I remember this, and I thought about this, and I remembered there was a church. I forgot to ask Bina about that church, Enterprise Church. It was, I forgot what street it was, but I remember we used to go to that church. And I recall way back, I think it was like 1959 or something like that, the white racist who came over from the other city, which is right next to Compton, they came and they firebombed the church. I remember that. I was about 4 years old or 5 years old. I think we just moved to this one area there in Compton. That's how I met Bina and so forth and so on. So we've been knowing each other since we were 5 years old. And they came and burned that church down. Or they didn't burn it down. I think they burned it down real bad. I'm trying to remember all the circumstances when we were little. But I remember my father said something very interesting. He said, you can never trust a man. You should never love a man who goes after another man's religion. That's what my dad told me. And I was a little boy. He was very angry because they stopped us from worship. Why? This is what I'm talking about. This is part of Shaitan's method, his steps to what? To stop worshiping Subhanahu wa ta'ala. So he goes and he burns the church. His Munions, these people, the white nationalists. And I'm telling you, the white nationalist supremacists are under the influence of the devil. Anyone who says not, how can anyone, you think about this, how can any human being get another human being and string him up on a tree? Okay? And they have done this and they're still doing this for 400 years. What human being can do that? String up another human being on a tree, hanging, and then cut off his private parts. And that's not even enough to kill him that way. Then burn him alive. Well, he's only a little bit left in his soul, and he burned him alive. Now, is anyone's going to argue and tell me, no, they're not under the influence of the devil? They are under the influence of the devil to do such a thing like that, and continue to do it for all these hundreds of years, and they're still doing it today. We still hear about these type of incidents that occur. They're under the influence of, they're following the steps of Shaitan. They're not following Subhanahu wa ta'ala's guidance at all. Even though they claim to be Christians, they say that they're Orthodox Christians. They're not following Isa alayhi salatu salam, because if they were following that, they would not do such a thing. And speaking of that, let me give you something that's a little bit off track, but in some ways it's still the same thing. We have Christians, and I talked about this on another show one time. We have Christians that say it about the Muslims. They use the word jihad because they don't understand jihad. They don't understand the Arabic meaning of jihad, the verb, what it means, actually means. It doesn't mean to kill. They don't understand jihad. So they trump us with that. They talk against us with that. Even the white nationalist supremacists who've been killing us for 40 years, they get on the Muslims talking about, you practice this, you kill a bunch of people and you drop bombs. You do this and you bomb up a store with kids in it. Okay. Yet and still, they said, we're Christians. We don't do that. We don't follow that. Well, wait a minute. Whoa, wait a minute. Let's look at something. Now, the same book that they claim that they are following, let's look at Luke 19:27. Those who got a Bible. In there, Jesus, alayhi salatu salam, said, bring my enemies before me who do not follow me and slay them. That's jihad. I'm trying to make a point to show you that the people that follow the devil are not following Jesus, alayhi salatu salam. They're not following him. And the white racists still use jihad against the Muslims. And yet our prophet too, okay, talked about Jesus, alayhi salatu salam. Subhanahu wa ta'ala praises Jesus, alayhi salatu salam. He gave him precedence in this life. And Jesus talked about that jihad in Luke 19:27. It's there. That's jihad. I'm just trying to arm you so when the supremacists come to you after the Muslim and say, oh, you Muslims, you do this jihad. Now you can go to the Bible and say, well, okay, well, how do you decipher this? You said you follow Jesus, you should be in jihad as well, because this is what he said. That's right. So I just wanted to make a point for you so you can understand that hey, everything you should study. You should study because Isa Celestial Salam was not as the white racists tried to say, oh, he was this. Yes, he was a beautiful man. He was a prophet. Yes, but he was given direction by Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, and he still practiced jihad. And he did. And that verse in there tells you that he did practice jihad. Now, there's some other things here too, but I'm running short of time here. I don't want to take too much more of your time. Also, the footstep of the steps of Shaitan is what we call zina in Arabic. Remember, I covered this before. It's about the illegal sexual relations. That's part of the steps. The Muslims who follow this are following the steps of Shaitan. They're not following Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. They're not. Because the scholars have made it so and said that if the person is doing this weekly, he's now a mushrikun, meaning he's making worship upon it. Now, I'm not talking about the Muslim who has been, he's been perfect. And then suddenly he goes to a convention and something happened between him and a woman. We're not talking about that. And he goes to repent after that. We're not talking about that. We're talking about those who practice it 2 times, 3 times per week, every week. He never takes a break from it. This we're talking about. This person here is under the influences of the devil. And the person who made it to convention, who did do something with the woman, the devil got to him that time. That's why we were told by our prophet, he said that never be in a room with a woman's not your wife, because the third person there is the devil. And how many times we've seen that? We've seen this many times. So we're Muslims, we're very sensitive to this, that we don't want to practice debauchery because it takes you away from Subhanahu wa Ta'ala. And the Muslim who practiced debauchery at the time he's practicing it, he's not a Muslim until he repents from it. He is lost. He's been outside of Islam when he's practicing it. So that means if he's involved in debauchery on Monday, he's not a Muslim at the time he's practicing it. If he goes, cleans up, and he prays, he now returns back to the faith. But when he goes back again to do the same thing 2 days later, he's out of the fold of Islam again, and so forth. But our scholars have said that, many of our scholars have said that the person who does this on a continuous basis, he's a mushrikun. He's now worshiping that debauchery. So I wanted to let you know that zina and fawahish in Arabic, again, debauchery, all forms of debauchery is from the steps of Shaitan. You follow those steps. Subhanahu wa Ta'ala never guides any person, no human being, to do such a thing. And we have to repent from it. And when you repent from it, Shaitan's going to work hard to bring you back to it, because that's how he traps you. Especially, we see this today, and it's relevant to this talk right now. What happens with the Muslims and what happens to African Americans, especially there in America? We have the Tuba woman who has used this for 400 years against the African American man when he's not done anything to them. And she goes to the police and say, guess what this guy did to me? And they go lynch him. How many have suffered from this and still suffer today? They're in jail because some Tuba woman lied. Now with the cameras and with the cell phones, we can take pictures. And we caught some of these Tuba women making it like, hey, if you don't leave this part now, I'm going to say you tried to ravish me. In the olden times, we had no proof. And they convict the brother when he didn't do anything wrong. This is the steps of Shaitan. That's what this woman and the woman who do this, and our sisters who are starting to do this same thing now too. We have sisters who are doing this as well. They're under the influence of the devil, because Subhanahu wa Ta'ala doesn't guide anybody. And the brothers who out there fornicating, he also is under the influences of the devil. And again, you know that the condition of your country is this. Shaitan is slick. The devil is slick. He's got the man and woman. So what he does, he makes the woman the facilitator of the debauchery. And then he makes the man the seeker of it, meaning he leaves his home looking for it, because now she's the facilitator of it. The two meet, this spreads. That's why our Prophet, alayhi salatu wasalam, in the Sharia, we have strong laws against it. And even Jewish laws is also strong in this regard, that we want to stop it and put it into it because it destroys nature. Look at America today. It's, I mean, that's a story in itself that we could spend weeks talking about that. But again, arming yourself with knowledge. The woman, okay, not all, but the devil has worked on certain women to be facilitators of debauchery, to walk the streets, because why? The men are weak. And subhanahu wa ta'ala put something natural in us to have desire for a woman. That's natural. Why? To increase the species. This is normal. We're not talking about that the relation between a man and a woman is wrong. No, under the guise that's supposed to be under marriage. That's the Muslims, what we believe. And when he makes this woman a facilitator, now she can draw out the men, because as the man weakened inside his home, he knows that she's out there. So he goes outside his house. How many times we've seen this? How many times? The brother's got a wife in there, a good woman. She do everything for her husband, but he goes to find this facilitator to go to have relations with. Why? Why is that? Because the devil has forced that. So this is part again of the scheme of the devil, is by putting debauchery into this scheme, making the woman the facilitator of it, making the man the seeker of it. He seeks it out because he knows the facilitator. And you look at the societies, my dear brothers and sisters, where our women are strong. They have less influence from the devil. You have very little diseases, sexually transmitted diseases. You have very little debauchery, because when our women are strong, our nation is strong. When our debauchery among our sisters is low, and her iman is high, her faith is high, our nation is strong. Our children are strong as well. So we have that guide and guidance by looking at our sisters. That's why it's important, my dear brothers, that we protect our sisters in all facets of life. If you see your sister out there on the street, perhaps she may not be right. You should talk to her if you can. I know it's kind of difficult sometimes in the United States, because they can lie on you and Tupac roll up on you and they can kill you. We know that. I mean, we know, but here, like in the Muslim countries, you can do it. We don't have this type of fear. But I know in the United States, you got to be very careful. You see a woman, she may not be right. You go and say, "Hey, ma'am, can I assist you?" And she turn around and get on the phone and say, "Look, this black man, this is what he did to me." And boy, the cops roll up on you, Bob roll up on you, and he say, "You know what? I'm going to shoot this NIGGR," and boom, and they then go tell, "Oh, I saw him. He had something in his hand. And we had this report that this woman here was being assaulted by a black man." We see that. So to make a point, again, debauchery is a big step and is used by the devil. And we know that many of the Western heads of state use debauchery as a means to get at the third world countries. We know this because they're under the influence of the devil. Now, I gave some different surahs in the Quran. I gave you that for your reference. You can do research on that. And subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the foot of Shaytan. Don't follow it. He tells you in there, don't follow that. And in Baqarah, which is the second surah, 68, I wrote down some of those. He talks about Shaytan, talking about the devil. Don't follow his way. And there's others. There's other things here too, other verses I gave you to help you into your study of this issue of fiqh, of the influences of the devil. This will help you tremendously in understanding that subhanahu wa ta'ala is on it. He's been on it for 1400 years. He's always been on it. And he gives you the verses in the Quran to help you to understand the method of the devil, not to follow him. He gives you beautiful verses in the Quran to tell you, like the 7th surah, number 42. Subhanahu wa ta'ala this is a beautiful sentence that he wrote, especially in Arabic. He wrote this particular sentence. It talked about the footsteps of the devil. That's Surah 7, and the verse is 142. It is beautiful what he says. And for the Muslim, he should read this and get a good understanding about subhanahu wa ta'ala, what he feels about the devil, and how he's helping you to understand the devil's mindset, why he's after you and to protect you. And this verse here is beautiful, beautiful. He tells you in it that the devil is your enemy. He's telling you straight out. And he's telling you in many verses too, he's telling you that the devil is your enemy. He's your number one enemy. It's not your wife. It's not actually the Tubab. The number one enemy to you is the devil. He is it. That's why I remember I said in the 4 conditions of jihad, the first is cleaning yourself, right? Your heart. And the second is what? To fight the devil. That's right. See, to fight the devil off. That's the conditions of the two of the 4 conditions of the jihad is the cleansing of the heart, and then Shaitan, to fight him and all his methods and his party and the people who follow behind him. And remember, those who follow the footsteps of Shaitan, you fight them in the best way you can. Best way you can. You pray against them and you fight them, and the best way is to keep on the Quran and the Sunnah. There's another verse here, also in Baqarah. Subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about the footsteps of Shaitan again in the 2nd surah in 208, as I explained. And also in the Surah 24, which is one of my favorite surahs about the Nur. Surah Nur, Subhanahu wa ta'ala, and it gives you guidance about marriage, about what woman to marry, and about debauchery. I've been over this particular a long time about this particular surah. This is Surah 24 and verse 21. But if you read all through this particular beautiful surah, Subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you guidance about wives, who you should marry, and so forth and so on, and about protection of your private parts. He talks about this in this particular surah. And also the surah before it, Surah Al-Mu'minun. The first 11 is a guide to Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells who are the true believers. And one of the conditions of the true believer is protecting against debauchery, protecting your private parts. That's right. Because you cannot be a strong believer if you're involved in debauchery. You cannot. I don't care how much you pray, how much dhikr you make. If you're making debauchery, one of the conditions that Subhanahu wa ta'ala has put in that verse is about protecting your private parts. He said that. And he talked about that. And in Surah 23, the verse guard your prayers. If you look at that, if you got your Quran, Al-Mu'minun is Surah 23. If you look at the first 11, Subhanahu wa ta'ala gives you guidance on who is a true believer. And he gives you the conditions of victory. He says about that. He talks about believers must eventually win, though, meaning you follow his way, in time you will win. He talks about that. Then he says in number 2, those who humble themselves in their prayers. This is a believer. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you, so you have a guide. Our Lord, Subhanahu wa ta'ala, Rabbil Alameen, he gives you how you can be a believer. You don't have to guess at it. You don't have to go around the corner to look for it. You don't have to go ask a lot of people to understand it. You can pull out the book. Subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you this. Now, to get better explanation, of course, we need the scholars and people of knowledge to explain this for us. But he's still giving you, you can get the essence. He says the third one, to avoid vain talk. Now, we know we'll talk about this. The brothers do it too, but the sisters are more vile in this, where, you know, they have a little coffee shop and they talk about another sister and how cruel they can be. Oh, you think she's so cute. Look at her hair. She's this, that. This is what he's talking about. And the brothers too, when they're jealous about another brother, especially in the Muslims today, we have that. The brother comes back from the Muslim countries, or he goes to a a prominent Islamic school. He comes back to teach his brothers, and they go after him out of jealousy. This is what we're talking about here. 4, subhanahu wa ta'ala says, who are active in deeds of charity. If you're not a believer, if you don't give sadaqah, sadaqah in Arabic means a charity to give. When you see someone, he's on the street, and you see him drinking dirty water, why can't you go to the store there and buy him a bottle of water and give him some money so he can get something to eat? You get rewarded for that. This is what subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about. Giving charity when people need it. Number 5, you are a true believer if you abstain from sex. What sex is he talking about? He's not talking about with your wife. No, he's talking about what? Debauchery. This is a true believer. Subhanahu wa ta'ala says this. And number 5, who abstains from sex, meaning outside of the marriage. 6, he says, those who join them in marriage bond or captives when their right hands possess, for their case, they are free from blame. Okay, that's a different situation. We're talking about like in time of war, where you have captive women. And I told you the rules of the Muslims in the past. In the war, we don't leave the women. If the men are killed in the city after war, you don't leave the women to fend for themselves. We take those women in and we put them in the care of Muslim families under the man's care. And if that woman agrees, there's a lot of conditions. I don't want to get into that, a lot of rules about that. But if he has sexual relations with her, not forced, we're not talking about forced sexual relations, but if he has sexual relations with this particular woman, he's okay. This is what subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you here. Number 7, but those who desire to exceed, those are transgressors. Again, debauchery. If you leave that house, if you go and seek it, you're a transgressor. You're not a believer. You're not a believer. Those who observe their trust and their covenants. You have to keep on to what? Quran and Sunnah. Quran and Sunnah. If you do this, you're a believer. You keep your because you have a trust and you have covenants. When you go and you swear upon the Quran. Remember I was telling you about the bay'ah. Remember we talked about the bay'ah, the pledge, the Muslim pledge to the ruler. This condition that you will observe what? The Quran, the laws of the Quran and the Sunnah of the Prophet. You say these in the words. Now, number 9, those who guard their prayers. Interesting, huh? Who guards their prayers. And then there's others here, but we won't get into that. But I gave you the essence of that and how important that particular surah is. So my dear brothers and sisters, I'm going to be concluding here. I gave you a lesson today because we're in Ramadan. And Ramadan is a special time for us. This is a good time for us to clean up ourselves, to learn that we've been under the steps of Shaitan. Now we should be armed ourselves so when we come out of Ramadan, we don't fall back into the same traps. We don't fall back into debauchery anymore. We don't do this. And I'll give you some other verses for time. I don't have time to write them down. But in Surah Nisa, which is 4, there's 42 and 141, 142 and 143 and Surah 4. That's an interesting one because, again, the person who follows the footsteps of Shaitan is this type of person. He's a munafiq. Remember, I used the word munafiq? He's a hypocrite. You can tell by his prayer. Subhanahu wa ta'ala talks about his prayer in this particular verse in the Quran. And he talks about this type of person. And he also talks about this hypocrite. And we see these people on YouTube today. We see many of them. They swear that they're Muslims, but you see them doing things that are not Islamic. Yes, subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about these kind of people in this verse. They go from Iman, ila olah. This is what he says in Arabic. Wala ilah. They go from this side over here and they go over here. They in faith, and then you see them another time. Here they hugging a woman. It's not their wife. She's not their wife. Hugging, being intimate with a woman is not his wife. And I know I've had some people, and I've talked even about this with others. We have noticed some people on YouTube are doing this. And my wife and I talked about this as well. And some others have talked about this. I've had somebody to write me about this and ask me a question about a person who was doing this and said, I'm confused, Yahya. I hear what you're telling me, but I see this other one who said he's Muslim, but I see him hugging other women. They're not his wife. How can I reconcile that? I told the dear sister, the person who's doing that is wrong. He's outside of the folds of Islam at this time, meaning he's practicing debauchery. I'm not saying he's a kafir disbeliever. No, I'm not saying that. But he's doing things. He's got one foot in that disbelief. Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you that he is a munafiq. He's a hypocrite because he's telling you he's going to one side. You see him, he's talking, he's pulling up the Quran, he's doing this and that. And then the next day, the sister saw him in a program and she wrote me and says, I don't understand this. How could he go with this not his wife? He's hugging this woman. You see what I'm talking about? This verse covers that. And to arm yourself, the modern Muslims are this way. They'll tell you, look, I follow the Quran. So no, they don't. They'll tell you that to throw you off. But then you see him with the woman that's not his wife. He's holding hands with the woman. He's being intimate. He's even going in a hotel with the woman. We don't know what's going on behind the doors, but under the Sharia, he can be arrested for that because it's not his wife. It's not his wife. Okay, so you can understand. Now I'm arming you. So when these people come to you, the modernists and the secularists, this is what they are. They're hypocrites who come to you and tell you, Yahya, you know what? Hey, this is modern Islam. We have the right. I can go this. And I can go and do this. And it's funny. These men who are doing this, what would they say if their wives did that? They'd be all over her, wouldn't they? They would be stopping her. But yet they do it. These are the hypocrites that Subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about in this verse. That's Surah 4, verse 142 and 143. Subhanahu wa ta'ala, he knows the human being very well, and he describes them in these verses for you to learn from that. So you see these Muslims, you see they said they're Muslim, and you see them on YouTube or in other media things, and they're with all kind of different women. They're not their wives. They're holding their hands. They're hugging them. You see them coming out of a room with them. You see them almost holding hands, walking down the street. You see them going to restaurants to eat, not with their wives. And under the Sharia Islamia, that's debauchery. You can be arrested for it. His wife or the woman who does this can be arrested for that. That's right. They can be arrested for debauchery. And I wanted to make that clear because someone's asked me that. Someone asked me about that because they saw something on TV the other day. They asked me and they said, Yahya, and they were kind of like wanting to get on me. Like saying, well, how, you telling us we're not supposed to do this. But yet I see this guy, he said he's Muslim, he's doing that. It's bad news. We're not supposed to do that. This verse, again, covers that to tell you, beware of them. Also, and I'll close up here, the same Surah 4, 50 and 151. Subhanahu wa ta'ala tells about the people who make the differences between Subhanahu wa ta'ala and our Prophet ﷺ. They're under the footsteps of the devil. They'll give you guidance. We have this on YouTube as well. They'll tell you, I don't want to follow this part of the Quran, but I'll follow what the Prophet ﷺ said. And then you'll come back and say, you know what? There's something in the Sunnah I like, but I don't like what I saw in the Quran. So I won't follow. I won't follow this, but I'll follow what the Prophet said. You can't make a distinction like that. Subhanahu wa ta'ala here is telling you, those who do that, you're true disbelievers. So I'm giving you information to help you. There's other surahs too I can get into, like Surah 9, 107, 108. I talked about this surah before about the masjids, where the people go and they take over a masjid and they're hypocrites and they're plotting against the Muslims. They're under the influences of the devil. Because when you go to a masjid and you take the masjid and you make it into a place of hypocrisy, it's under the devil. And lastly, I'll get into, here's some other issues of fiqh. I will pronounce this in Arabic, and anybody who wants to, because I didn't have time to translate this, because it's kind of hard to translate in English. But there's conditions in fiqh, Islamia, again, about the footsteps of the devil. There's dorm nefs. This talks about your heart. Okay. 2, dorm su'an. This means you have evil thoughts all the time. This is from the devil. The third is shirk ta'a, meaning you put obeyances on debauchery. You put obeyances on things that are wrong, meaning you know you're not supposed to go steal from the store, but you do it every week. Now, I'm not talking about those who are poor, who don't have no food. Even then, you shouldn't do it, but they're more of an understanding who dirt poor. They don't have nothing to eat. They got children waiting at the table for a piece of bread to eat, and you go to steal for it. We're not talking about that. We're talking about people that do have the means, but they go and steal. That's what we're talking about. Also, when you follow the evil people like the Salibiyin and the white nationalists, and you go and you make advances on their commands, that's what they're talking about. Kufr Hakimiyya. This is who judge. Kufr Hakimiyya in Arabic, meaning those who judge by using other than the Sharia. We have Muslims doing it today. We have a Muslim go after you and say, look, Yahya, you know what? I know that you were in prison 10 years ago for robbery, and he still tried to use that. He's now using some other method to judge you. Under Islam, you cannot, because in 10 years, at the 10 years ago, say I wasn't a Muslim at that time. You can't use that against me, because when I come to Islam, that washes away. But the hypocrites will use that. We call this kufr hakimiyya. This one part of that. And the last one is kufr iradi. You know this is disbelief, and you practice it anyway. You know that subhanahu wa ta'ala tells you you should not do this, and you still do it. This is what he's talking about. So my dear brothers and sisters, I gave you a quick lesson on fiqh and about shaitan. I'm a little longer today. Please forgive me, because we're about ready to break fast here as well. And I know you guys are still fasting. I'm about ready to close up here. We're going to be breaking fasting here in another 25 minutes. And I'm hoping your Ramadan is well. And I'm hoping that everything is going well. And my dear brothers and sisters, this lesson today, if you didn't understand it very well, please review it again. And if you have questions, you know how to reach me. I've left my particulars. And I want to, again, thank my brothers and sisters, my dear sister from Compton, Abina. You know, I thank you, my dear sister. She's my sister from Compton. And my dear brother, Isaac, he's always here to support me. Thank you, my dear brother. And there's my sister here from Morocco, Amina. And I thank you, my dear sister, for showing up as well. And those that are not here in the chat room, the sisters and brothers who did show up today, thank you for showing up and to support your brother and to listen to your brother talk about this topic here about Shaitan, because Shaitan is real. Never think it's not real. Everything that goes with the sin, this is what the scholars say, is from him. And we know that. I'm giving you information here to arm yourselves. You can look at the verses in the Quran. They help you to study, to guard you, to strengthen you against Shaitan. That's important. And as usual, my dear brothers and sisters, this is Ramadan, but still, I'm asking subhanahu wa ta'ala, especially for my brothers and sisters in America. I feel for you. I don't know who, any of us who are living there, when you leave the house, you can be shot. I mean, it's gotten to that point now. I hope subhanahu wa ta'ala protects us who are living in the United States, protect us from these devils. This is what they are. They're devils who do this. They're devils. They worship the devil, and they're behind the devil. The devil is in their souls. And I hope that he protects you from this man, and that he protects your family from the evil curses of the devil. And then he rewards you, and he keeps you safe and keeps your family safe. And he strengthens your faith. If you strengthen your faith, this will help you. And if someone does take your life, you die as a Muslim. That's important, my dear brothers and sisters. And to keep on to the Quran and Sunnah. Don't follow under the debauchery. And my dear brothers and sisters, please listen to subhanahu wa ta'ala. Listen to the angels. And when they come to you and they give you something good, open your mind, open your heart, and listen. When they tell you, don't go over to this place, it's filled with debauchery, and you let the devil overtake you. You ask subhanahu wa ta'ala to strengthen your heart so you don't go to that place where it's full of debauchery and whatnot. And for the Muslims who are involved in debauchery, I hope that those who are listening to me, I'm not trying to shame anyone. I'm only giving you the facts from the Quran and Sunnah, that you do come to the right way. Those who show themselves in the media with women that are not their wives. I'm hoping that you repent from that and that you come back to the right way, because you're making a negative impression of Islam. When I have a Christian sister write me and ask me, because she's close to being a Muslim, she wants to be a Muslimah, and she sees this on TV, that is something that is wrong. And I hope Subhanahu wa Ta'ala protects us from that. And he brings those Muslims who are misguided this way to bring them to the right way. Because we have many of these Muslims now on the media. We see them and they're with women that they shouldn't be with, and hugging them, holding hands with them. This is wrong. It's wrong. So Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, I hope he brings those Muslims to the right way. We're not here to condemn them. We only to bring out their faults, that they do come back to the right way, because they should come back to the right way. And Subhanahu wa Ta'ala bless us and keep us safe. My dear brothers and sisters, this is Ramadan, and I'm hoping that you enjoy your Ramadan, that you get the blessings from it, that you get the purifications from it, and that you get the protections from it. So when you come out of Ramadan, Shaitan will be out there waiting for you again, and then you'll be armed to fight him, to prevent you from joining his forces, the Hizb of Shaitan is what we call it in Arabic. So my dear brothers and sisters, thank you for showing up. May Subhanahu wa Ta'ala bless you. Rahma Allah alaikum. Tabarakallah ta'ala. He blesses the Muslims and he blesses those who do good. Fi mani Allah. And I leave you with the words of Subhanahu wa Ta'ala, the words of Jinnah. Salamu alaikum. Rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.